Okay, welcome to Year 8 Science Online with Henny van Vieren.
Hey guys, I hope you guys are really well. Yeah, I cannot believe it. I did it again. I recorded a whole lesson without the record button being pushed. I'm so excited. Anyways, let's try that again. Today we're starting a new unit. This unit is all on botany. So it's basically biology, and I try to make it a lot wider than just botany and flowering plants and so forth. So today is an introduction to the five kingdoms and um, where we fit in and so forth. And then next time we'll be looking at the differences between plant and animal cells and so forth. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into the lesson. Alrighty, so I love this picture. It just makes me happy to see our little friends, the bees, the pollinators. They are extremely important to us. I hope you all know that because without them, our food production will completely drop down because they are the ones that fertilize most of our food crops out there. There are other animals that also do this for us, but bees are the predominant ones. And you will actually, in some places, there's mobile bee um, hives where people would drive out to an area where pollination is needed. So it's actually really, really interesting. Anyways, anybody recognize this lady? Her name is Mrs. Gren. Some people call her Mrs. C. Gren. Now, Mrs. Gren is the lady who decides if you are alive or not. And when we look at various things, as biologists, we use this as a measure of is something alive. So let's think about, for instance, a fire. Okay, so does a fire have movement? Yes, the flame moves. Does the fire respire? In other words, does it take in oxygen and breathe out CO2? Yes, it does that. Does it consume nutrition to make that happen? Yes, because it needs a source for burning. That's interesting. Do you think fires can sense their environment? Do they know that you're coming with a bucket of water to throw on it? No, they don't. Can a fire grow? Absolutely, it can get out of control. Can a fire reproduce? Yeah, it can send out sparks and create a new fire somewhere. Does it excrete anything? Well, the CO2 comes out as smoke. Does it eat anything? Well, it consumes stuff, but as we see here, it cannot sense its environment. And also, when we have Mrs. Seagreen, people say that it needs cells, and consequently, fire definitely do not have that. What about a virus? I mean, we're all at home at the moment because of a virus. Is a virus alive? And I find that really interesting because a virus, even though it's really difficult to explain. It's basically a bunch of molecules together that wants to, and its own sole purpose is just to reproduce. Um, that's all it wants to do. And whether that makes you sick is not the point. All it wants to do is reproduce. So when you look at a virus, so COVID-19, is there any movement involved in a, can a virus move? No, it cannot. You and I are the ones that will help it move by sneezing or coughing or spitting while we talk or even plain out spitting and so forth. And then somebody else might get that into their mouth or touch it on a surface and put their fingers in their mouth and so forth. Do they respire? No, they don't. They don't need to take in because they don't need nutrition. They don't need glucose. They don't need oxygen. They do not need to create energy. Can they sense their environment? No. They wouldn't know if you are trying to kill it with something. Do they have cells? No, they don't have cells. Can they grow? Do you have an itty bitty little baby virus that's going to turn into a big virus? No, it's not how it works. The one thing that it does do is it reproduces. But can it reproduce itself? And the answer again is no. It's like a pirate that hijacks a ship, or hijacks a factory, for instance, um, to make more pirates. So, yeah, maybe we should think about it as a rogue robot. And this rogue robot takes over a machine factory, and he basically then uses the machine factory. He puts his plans into the machine factory, and the machine factory keeps on making more robots, more robots, more robots, until the factory is so full of robots that it cannot contain them anymore, and they explode out, and they all go and find their own new machine factory to take over. That is how a virus works. It takes over your cell, and literally it uses your cell to make more of itself. It's a hijacker. And then your cell makes more and more and more until it is so full of um, viral material that it literally explodes, and your virus then goes and finds another cell and another cell and another cell and another cell. So yeah, I find viruses amazing but also scary, because we cannot really treat them that well. So you guys need to please look after yourselves. Okay. And then excretion, a virus definitely doesn't excrete. Now you are expected to know the Mrs. Gren. You're expected to know what they stand for. Mrs. C. Gren. You have to be able to memorize this. So movement, respiration, sensitivity or sensing, cells, growth, reproduction, excretion, and nutrition. Okay, here we have the five kingdoms. The five kingdoms of living things on Earth. So you and I, we fall part of Animalia. Now you don't have to remember it that way. It's simply animals. And in animals we have insects, we have fish, we have jellyfish, we have all the animals that's on the earth. Okay? So it's not just mammals. Then we have fungi. One of my favorite things in the world are fungi. And fungi include mushrooms and toadstools, but also includes the yeasts and so forth. And did you know that the biggest living thing by area, in other words, how many kilometers it is big, the biggest thing in the world is a fungus. It's called humongous fungus, and it's an Armillaria species that's found in North America. Did you know the biggest animal that ever lived? Do you think that was a dinosaur? It was not a dinosaur. Actually, it is the blue whale, which is alive today. And we know so little about blue whales. I just find that incredible. So the heaviest thing in the world, single thing in the world, is actually a plant. And it is, oh no, I can't remember its name. I will show you a video about it, but it's a forest of trees that are all baby trees of itself. It's got one root system. All of them come out of the same root system. I wish I could remember the name now. But anyways, so the heaviest living thing on earth is a plant. Now we go from biggest to smallest. And these guys, bacteria and protists, are single-celled, meaning they consist only of one cell. This is not a bacterium, these are actually two bacteriums, okay? Now the major difference between bacteria cells and the other four kingdoms is that bacteria do not have a nucleus. They are very primitive, but they're also very successful. Very small, we cannot see them with the naked eye. We actually struggle to see them with our school light microscopes. We can pick them up, but they usually just show up as little dots. Interestingly enough, the biggest bacterium around is, oh, I can't remember the genus name, but it's called something namibiensis, because it was found off the coast of Namibia, and it is literally a millimeter big. Now, a millimeter big bacteria means you can actually see it with the naked eye, which is huge for bacteria, that is. Okay, and then protista. These are things like, have you heard of amoeba? And have you heard of malaria? Malaria is a protist. Um, what's that bad stomach bug? Giardia. Giardia is also a protista. That's why you get so sick from it. And you, because we can't use antibiotics to kill them. Antibiotics only refers to bacteria. Okay, not to protists. Anyways, yeah, there we go. So some of you were talking about infections. Fungi, we can also have fungal infections. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen something called ringworm. That's actually not a worm, that's a fungi that grows on your skin. And athlete's foot, you might have heard of that. So, all of these types of things. Now, when you look at a cell, the five different kingdoms all have different things that make them up them. And but as I said, the bacteria, when you look at it, they do not have a nucleus. Now, when you talk about matter and you talk about atoms and so forth, the smallest thing that we break it down to are matter, or the particles. Okay, so that would be down to the atomic level. Whereas the smallest living basis of life is the cell. Okay, so if anybody said, what is the smallest um, thing that is alive? It is a cell. Okay, cell is the basis of all living things. Anyway, so when you look, these are eukaryotes, and as I said, so fungi, this is actually an animal cell, but fungi and plants and so forth, they all share a lot of characteristics. But when you look at a bacterium, these are the single cellular organisms. Now you will see that its DNA is floating around freely inside of it. Some of them have like a whip that's called a flagellum, and they usually use that to swim around with. Okay, um, and then the other single-celled organisms out there are called protists or protista. Some people call them protozoans. They are almost like tiny animals, and but some of them, yeah, they can swim around and do all kinds of different things, but they also have a nucleus. Okay, now bacteria do not have a nucleus. Their DNA is simply floating around. Nucleus controls the cell because it controls the nucleus, controls the DNA. Okay, so let's have a look at this little video. This is one of my favorite videos. Let me just pause it there. So what you're going to see is you're going to see an amoeba that is going to go and surround two paramecium. Okay, the paramecium are other protists. So these are three cells, single-celled organisms, and they are, the amoeba is hunting the other two, and the other two don't realize it, but it's engulfing them. It's not only, the picture that we look at is two-dimensional, but you need to think about it as three-dimensional. It's kind of like if you stick your hand into, or your finger into a balloon, it kind of bulges, and then imagine that you could break that off and have a little balloon inside a balloon. So that's what's happening here. Okay. Now, as you can see there, the amoeba goes and it puts its pseudopods or false arms around these two guys, and it is slowly engulfing them. And then when he's got them inside this its little bag, it's called a vacuole, he now releases enzymes and he's starting to dissolve them alive. He's literally dissolving them with chemicals. The enzymes are breaking them down, and eventually they just turn into mush. And that's how fast it happens. So there's your single cell organism, and now he's got a nice little baggie full of food so that he can go on. Cooler. Anyways, so now we go and look at the multicellular organisms. So over here we have fungi. As I said, I love fungus. This one specifically is called Amanita muscaria, and I know it's really beautiful, and all the children's books show fairies sitting on them and so forth, but actually this specific fungus is very poisonous. Okay, When you see it, take a photo, enjoy looking at it, but don't even touch. It is really poisonous. Its nephew, Amanita panther, okay, looks very much the same but is brown and also has the white dots on them. And that one is extremely, that one is actually lethal. This one will make you sick, the other one can actually kill you. Okay, so just look, don't touch. Anyways, but fungi are closer to animals than what they are to plants because a fungus needs to eat other things. So when you see a fungus growing, it is either growing on um, dead plant material or stuff like that. Um, you can have it growing on animals as well and dead animals. And you've all seen fungi when you left your lunchbox in your suitcase for the holidays, and then you take it out. My daughter gave me one yesterday that was absolutely lovely. Since we've been on lockdown, she forgot it in her backpack. So yeah, you've all seen things like that. And for interest's sake, so cowrie dieback disease that we currently have is also a fungus, um, and it's called Phytophthora cinnamomumi. Phytophthora means plant killer. So yeah. Okay, so animals. What do animals do? Can they photosynthesize? Can they make their own food? No, they can't. So we need to eat either other animals or fungi or plants. So that's how we get our nutrition as animals. Now, plants do this amazing thing called photosynthesis. Imagine that you want to have some lollies. I'm in the mood for some lollies. I need something sweet. And you say, just excuse me for a moment. I'm going to go sit in the sun and I'll go make some glucose. I'll go make some sugar by sitting in the sun. That is exactly what plants do. They take the carbon dioxide that comes out of our mouths that we don't want. They take the carbon that's in that carbon dioxide and they turn that into plant. They turn it into sugar. They turn it into glucose. And when you look at a tree, a giant tree, that tree used to be carbon dioxide. It used to be a gas that you can't even see with your own eyes. To me, that's just incredible. I love that. Okay, but we're all interdependent. The circle of life. Okay, just like Lion King. All the kingdoms are interdependent. So the sun's energy, all biological energy on Earth, well, almost all. I will give you a link that you can go and watch, that you need to go and watch, all about the chemotrophs. But most biological energy on Earth comes from the sun. So a lion will eat an impala. This is an impala. A lion will eat an impala. Where did the impala get its energy from? From the grass. Where did the grass get its energy from? From photosynthesis through the sun. So even the lion will get its energy from originally the sun. Okay, so sun converts it. The plant takes sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide and makes the glucose and also oxygen. The sugars and the oxygen then goes into animals, and when plants and animals die or animals excrete, the dead matter is utilized by bacteria and fungi, and these guys are called the decomposers. And they turn that back into nutrients and minerals, and they release a bunch of CO2. And the minerals and CO2 go back into the atmosphere and then back into the plant with sunlight to make more glucose, back into the animals, back into, you understand? So it's the circle of life. So, Animalia. So when we talk about animals, we start off by breaking them into two major groups. You first want to say, do they have a backbone or do they not have a backbone? This is not like in class when you say you're spineless. It is, do we really have a backbone? Okay? Now, so the backbone, your spine, that proper name for that is the vertebra. So your vertebral column. So we have vertebrates and invertebrates. Now, if you think about it, anything with an internal skeleton, they are called vertebrates. So those are mammals, which we form part of, amphibians like frogs and salamanders, and then birds, reptiles, and fish. Animals with no backbone are called invertebrates. So they can be like worms, jellyfish, octopus, and insects, and spiders, and um, scorpions. They all, the scorpions and so forth, have an exoskeleton. Okay, so they do not have an internal skeleton. But animals are consumers. No animals at all, well, believe it or not, there are, I know of about 4 or 5 animals that can photosynthesize, but they can't do it on their own. They need the plants to help them. So all animals must eat plants and digest food to obtain nutrients. Therefore, the plants are the producers. They make the glucose for the animals. That's why plants are probably the most important kingdom on the planet. So there we go. That's you. That's your vertebral column. That's Fido over there, your dog, and you can see the tail is part of that vertebral column all the way to the neck. You can see there's your tailbone, which is called your coccyx. Here we go, as a horse. There's the vertebral column all the way down. And you've got 7 vertebrae in your neck. Whether you, all mammals have 7 vertebrae in their neck. Whether you're a giraffe or whether you're a human. Interesting, sharks, they don't have bone. They are cartilaginous fish. So more like the stuff that's in your ears and on the tip of your nose. And then, but they still have a vertebral column. And you can see over here the kiwi bird, definitely a vertebral column. So these are the vertebrates. So when we look at Animalia, we said there's 5 different types. So we have mammals. Mammals are live bearing. Okay, that means they give birth to a baby. And then, very important, the mother will breastfeed the baby. So the baby drinks mother's milk. Very, very important. Over here we have some amphibians. This guy, I love him, that's a beautiful photo, is an axolotl. And you can see it's got these external gills, but it also has lungs. And the axolotl is a type of amphibian. This guy over here, it looks really gross. It is the Chinese giant salamander. Highly, highly endangered. There's also a Japanese giant salamander, but this is the biggest amphibian on the planet, and as I say, highly endangered. Then, does anybody know what this is? If you look carefully, it's got a bill like a duck, it's got a tail, it's got fur, it's actually poisonous, and it's got babies that like to suck the milk from their mom. And this is a baby that has just been born. You can see the little flipper there. This is a platypus. And the platypus and the echidna are the 2 weirdos in the mammalian kingdom. Because they actually lay eggs. But then when they come out, the babies drink on the mom. And meaning that they are mammals. And they have fur and they're warm-blooded. So they are really interesting animals. So interesting that you know, when they were first discovered by Europeans, they sent a specimen back to London, and in London they wouldn't believe that it's a real animal. They said, no guys, you took a bunch of animals and you took some needle and thread and you sewed them together and you're trying to show us a fake animal just so that you can become famous and make money out of it. And the reason why they said that was because of this, which is called the Fiji mermaid. Now, did you see the movie on P.T. Barnum? P.T. Barnum was a guy he ran a freak show, and he was always doing these exhibits and charging people money, and he's like, look, evidence of the mermaid. This is the Fiji mermaid. You can see it's a small human-like front with a tail of a fish. But what actually happened here was that somebody, and you can see there in the years. This is the genuine um, article where he advertised, said, "Come and have a look at this." There was Egyptian mummies and Peruvian mummies, the duck-billed platypus, connecting bird and beast, being evidently half of each. And then the Fiji mermaid, which was exhibited in most of the principal cities of America in the years 1840, 41, and 42, to the wonder and astonishment of thousands of naturalists and other scientific persons, whose previous doubts of existence of such astonishing creation were entirely removed. Anyway, so that's the genuine article that he published to tell people, come and have a look at this thing. Pay me some money. Um, but yeah, it is a fake. It's a monkey that was then attached to a fish and preserved. So because of this, nobody believed that the duckbill platypus was real. Anyways, so we get to the vertebrates. Okay, and vertebrates are birds. This is my favorite bird of all time. It's called the Botany, and um, they have feathers, and remember, they lay eggs. They look after the eggs, and then the babies hatch. Unlike reptiles, who also lay eggs, but some of them don't look after their eggs at all. But birds are the closest relatives to the dinosaurs that we have at this stage. Um, and reptiles, the birds are warm-blooded, reptiles are cold-blooded. Okay. Now, this is a blobfish. It's not a President Trump fish. And underwater, the pressure is so high where he lives that he actually doesn't look like a blob when he's underwater. Google it, have a look. It's just because he's now out of the pressure that he suddenly looks so blobby. This one is one of my favorites as well. It's called the anglerfish, deep sea anglerfish. And this big fish, we know that she is a female. And the reason why we know that is that these two things hanging off her there, those are the actual males. So what happens is this male swims along. They live in such deep water that it's very difficult to find each other. So when they find each other, he bites into her. And then he releases special enzymes that dissolve her skin. And then she grows and he grows blood vessels that connect him to her. And he sits there for the rest of his life. He just grows into her and becomes like an organ. And whenever she wants to lay eggs and she needs them fertilized, he's right there. So that's how, yeah, like this one video I will show you guys is like, talk about a clingy relationship. And imagine you're sitting there and here comes another male and he's like, ha ha, here's a space for me. Kunk. And he's like, hey, get away, I had her first. But you can't do anything because you're grown attached. Anyway, so this is a specimen with two males on the one female. Okay, yeah, so that's Animalia. Now, when we come, or the vertebrates, these are the invertebrates. They are also multicellular. They are symmetrical. In other words, if I cut this tarantula right down the middle, it's going to look similar on each side. Okay, now you don't have to remember all of these things. You can just remember a few, um, like insects, mollusks are the snails, crustaceans, corals, arachnids, velvet worms, horseshoe crabs, jellyfish, and so forth. Okay. Um, as I say, please, you don't have to remember these names, especially all of these, but just for interest's sake, that is some kind of a jellyfish. This is a flatworm. Um, it could be a kind of slug, actually, now that I look at it. And these are sponges. They are actually animals that are alive. Sea sponges. Then we go to the bacteria, prokaryotes. It means before the nucleus. Okay, and prokaryotes are really interesting. They're single-celled. We believe that the archaea bacteria started to photosynthesize first, um, and then this would have evolved into plants and so forth. But yeah, so they are really small, from 5 millionth of a meter, and you need an electron microscope to view those. but you also get some really big ones. Okay, they are the true masters of the earth because, I mean, I've told you guys, before you go to the toilet, there's actually more bacteria on you and in you. In other words, more cells that are not you walking around as you. And just after you went to the loo, when you've emptied your bowels, there's you have just a little bit more cells that are you, that is not you, and then they start to multiply again, and then they outnumber you again, which is just amazing to think about. This guy is called Pyrococcus furiosus. Sounds like he escaped from Harry Potter, but he can survive at 100 degrees Celsius, and that is what is called an extremophile. Okay, um, there's some bacilli for you. This is Lactobacillus acidophilus. That's the one that you find in your yogurt, so that's a very useful one. This is not such a useful one. It's called Yersinia pestis, and Yersinia pestis was the plague in Europe. So remember the Black Plague? All those stories about people dying in Europe all over the place. And today we have a different plague. We're sitting here because of a viral plague. But this is Yersinia pestis. That was the one who caused the bubonic plague. I think that's where we'll call it a day for today. So we've gone through the five kingdoms. I hope you found this interesting. What I do want you to do is to go onto the YouTubes, and when you go onto the YouTubes, I want you to please look for um, greatest discoveries, and it is going to be I wonder if it's black smokers. Yeah, and when you click on videos, hydrothermal vents or black smokers, I will post a link for this for you as well. It is really, really, really interesting. Okay. Alright, guys. I hope you have a great day. I hope you stay safe. Thank you for your attention. Keep well. Thanks. Bye.